the argument for and against Overwatch 2 on cloud gaming platforms. This is a video where I will read out something I wrote on a different social media platform, the forum for Overwatch, and in this post I actually talk about the advantages and disadvantages and the argument for and against Overwatch 2 being available on cloud gaming platforms like GFN, Boosteroid, and Amazon Luna, Xbox Cloud Gaming, and PlayStation Plus Premium. So let's have a read through of this, because it is quite a I did explain quite a lot in this post, so I went over the reasons quite extensively. So this is just good to have in mind when we look to the future of Overwatch 2 and how it will become more available to more people. So I'll read this through. These are the arguments for Overwatch 2 more accessible to more players, inclusive of low-powered Windows laptop, Chromebook, Mac, mobile, smart TV, TV stick, and iOS and Android users. And I would also add something here. I forgot to mention iPad as well, like iPad, tablets, and probably some other devices that I'm not thinking of at the moment, but also Steam Deck as well. You can run it on the Steam Deck through cloud gaming, and you can run it on ROG, the Asus ROG Ally, and all of these Windows gaming handhelds. All of these gaming handhelds benefit from the ability to run Overwatch 2 with much reduced battery life hit, which is great for the handheld segment, being able to run Overwatch. No special gaming hardware required, only need access to internet and web browser / cloud client. So you can pretty much play the game on any screen in your house, be it a TV or a smartphone or any kind of screen, as long as it has the ability to connect to internet and Wi-Fi. But you do need sometimes to have quite a more up-to-date version of operating systems like iOS 13 or iOS 12, I believe, does not support the GFN through Safari. So sometimes you do need to bear that in mind. You need quite an up-to-date device. Sometimes I don't know how it is on the Android side. I think on Android it's not as fussy with which Safari, like which web browser you use or which operating system version you're on of Android. I don't think it's as fussy with that, but with iOS it definitely does need you to have quite a new iOS version. But in the future we will be getting iOS specific version application, because right now we don't have apps for GFN or Boosteroid because Apple does not allow that, but they've been forced through the EU lawsuits to actually open up the App Store, and they have to allow cloud gaming applications now. So that's going to be great, because we're going to be able to get GFN on iPhone, iPad, and Boosteroid on iPhone and iPad and so on, which is really great because having it as an app is just more convenient and easier for the average user to do than having to make a web hook thing through Safari. It's quite difficult adding a shortcut to your home. It's kind of weird to do that. And also having it as the app, maybe it can even perform better as well. I would hope so. I would love to see 1080p, because right now we're limited to 720p on iPhones. So cost of entry barrier to the game lowered. No large initial outlay cost means cloud democratizes access to games. I think this point is quite self-explanatory. Obviously it's a much lower upfront cost. Like if you want to pay for GFN, it would only be £10 per month for priority or £20 for ultimate, and that means there's obviously a lower cost of entry barrier. No large initial, you don't have to pay for a console, which would be like £200 or $200 at least for the Xbox Series S, going up to £400 for the PlayStation or the Xbox Series X. So, and then a gaming laptop would be even more expensive, I think. especially if it's a dedicated gaming laptop with an up-to-date graphics card, it would be like 500, 600. So obviously cloud gaming has a much lower initial cost, and this is good for introducing new players to gaming in general, because they won't have to spend, maybe they don't want to spend a lot of money, maybe they're even already gamers, people who are older gamers, but they are stuck with old hardware like a PlayStation 4 maybe, or an Xbox One, which is getting quite dated nowadays. You can play Overwatch on an Xbox One, PlayStation 4, but you will kind of be stuck at 1080p and 60 FPS. So yeah, cost of entry barrier to the game is lowered. And I should also mention 60 FPS is the limit for GFN Priority and Boosteroid, but you can get 120 FPS through Ultimate tier on both of those services. Boosteroid is adding that tier soon. So I think I've covered that cost of entry barrier. Just goes hand in hand with the game being more accessible and raising the player count and so on, which is great. So as I say here, boosts player count, and this means shorter queue times, tighter matches, and more potential revenue from microtransactions. So basically, obviously, if the matchmaker has more people to choose from, then in theory you should get shorter queue times, and that means they won't have to pull in players from all kinds of different ranks as well, because there's more players to pick from, which means you'll have more balanced, closer, tighter matches, and more players will be spending on the game. Obviously, if there's more players, then you have more chance for those players to be interested in skins and potentially make purchases. And that potential revenue can go towards more improvement of the game. Obviously, this is in an ideal world. It won't always be put towards improving the game. It kind of lines the pockets of the shareholders and the CEOs, but that potential revenue can, in theory, if they see the game is profitable, then they'll be more likely to continue expanding Overwatch. Maybe even they'll do the PvE. They did actually get rid of the PvE team. I think Microsoft got rid of them, but they will continue to improve the game in general. Next point, cloud game stream platforms increasingly popular, as evidenced by capacity shortages and queue times. To explain this point a bit further, GFN actually recently was completely sold out of free tier and priority 1 month and ultimate 1 month. Obviously, you can't literally be sold out of the 1 month, and then because they probably weren't actually fully sold out, because they still had 6 months available, but they needed to sell the 6 months in order for it to be profitable, which goes to show that there were so many people buying GFN that they ran out of the 1 month, and they could only supply people with the 6 months, providing that they committed. Then they would have enough money to provide those servers. I think that's how it works anyway. And Boosteroid also had massive queue times, and that just goes to show the popularity of the services is increasing as well. I think even Xbox Cloud Gaming has seen queue times recently, and this is because of all the new games that have come to these GFN and Boosteroid. Like Call of Duty came to GFN. That game alone probably had a massive impact on the queue times. And loads of games came to GFN. Baldur's Gate as well, that had a big impact on queue times. Hogwarts Legacy was big for Boosteroid, that had really big impact on the queue times. But you can see that the services are getting more and more popular. No port required by developers for Windows-based cloud game stream platforms. So this point, just to explain a bit, a lot of people think that you need to develop separately for GFN, for GeForce Now, or for Boosteroid, but this isn't actually the case, because they actually run on Windows, so they run the same normal Windows operating system that Overwatch already runs on. And also, people get confused because Google Stadia used a variant of Linux, and for that Stadia you needed to port games. But for GFN, for Boosteroid, for the current cloud gaming platforms, which are pretty much all of them are on Windows, you don't need any kind of port. The only thing you might need to do is to implement the GFN dev toolkit. There's a thing, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a dev kit that allows you to integrate games into GFN a bit more tightly, better integration. But that's not actually necessary. All you have to do to include your game in the GFN library is just like check a box in Steam, and that will automatically notify Steam, and Steam will then pass that forward to GFN, who will then eventually put the game on the service whenever they feel they want to. But there is no need to port games, as people believe, and it's not something that will take time really. You don't even need to do the dev kit stuff. It's just an optional additional layer. Like if you want touchscreen support, then you might have to mess around with the dev kit stuff. But for most people, most developers, they won't need to do any of that. They'll just need to tick a box in Steam, provided the game is on Steam, and Overwatch is on Steam. So that's all they had to do to get the game on GFN. And I'm sure it works similarly for Boosteroid for other cloud gaming platforms. It might be a bit difficult with Amazon Luna because they don't actually have the Steam launcher integration on their cloud gaming platform. They have Ubisoft launcher but not Steam, so they might have to try to get that working. And they do have Fortnite, so they have Epic Games, but Overwatch is not on the Epic Games launcher right now. So yeah, hopefully something can be done by Amazon themselves to support Steam games. And Xbox Cloud Gaming, obviously you don't need a port for Xbox Cloud Gaming because Overwatch is a game on Xbox, and xCloud uses the Xbox Series X blades to run the service. So the next point is no disk space required on the user's local machine and no large initial download or updates. This point is self-explanatory. You don't need to fill up your storage with the game data, which is about 50 gigabytes for Overwatch, and you don't have to download the large updates, which can take a while to download depending on your internet speed. But generally it's just mostly a space saving thing. It's nice not to have to rely on disk space to be able to play the game. Despite increased latency, many users can still enjoy a casual experience. This is preferable to an inability to play at all. So in this point I did mention the latency, which we will cover in the against points, but I decided I wanted to include this here because what a lot of people argue against Overwatch is they say everyone wants to play competitively, which is not the case. A lot of people just play the game casually and they'll be fine to play Overwatch on cloud gaming platforms because they don't really have a super low latency requirement if they're just playing casually. And if they're not even really trying to compete, they just want to have casual fun, like mess around, they don't really care about losing too much, then that's fine, and that's better than not being able to play at all, I would argue, and not having the option, not having the choice. Okay, next point, can even be played on mobile devices, especially with controller attachments. So by this I mean with iPhone and with Android smartphones, you can use the Razer Kishi, you can use the Backbone, you can use all sorts of these controller attachments. Even you can use a PlayStation DualSense controller and connect it with a clip-on mount kind of thing, and those are quite cheaply available, so you can actually play on your mobile devices without having to rely on touch screen support. And touch is really difficult. I have tried playing with touch screen on just the touch screen on my iPhone. I've tried playing Overwatch, but it's quite impossible because there's so many buttons. You don't really have the ability to play with the touch screen. So I think it's great to be able to play on mobile, but nowadays mobiles, I would argue, a lot of mobiles don't have the best Wi-Fi chip. So in my experience, my iPhone was really stuttering, so I didn't have a great experience playing Overwatch through GFN on my iPhone, which is an iPhone SE. But still, for people who do have good Wi-Fi on their mobile devices, they can connect a controller. They can have pretty much an experience just like the Steam Deck or just like the Asus ROG Ally with significantly less money having to be spent, because obviously ROG Ally would set you back upwards of £500, Steam Deck about £500, less than 500, and you don't need to spend that much if you already have, everyone already has a mobile phone, right? You guys have mobiles, right? So everyone has a mobile and they can play Overwatch in theory through GFN with the controller attachments, which is great. And especially now on mobile, or rather with controller, especially with the recent patch which increases the hitboxes of all projectiles and all bullets, this is great for controller players, especially because they don't have to be as precise with their aiming. And this is great for cloud gaming in general as well. Even mouse and keyboard users will benefit from the increased projectile and hitbox sizes, because this means they don't need to aim as precisely. Next point is, some heroes remain largely playable even with moderate latency, for example Reinhardt or Mercy. In this case, the player may leverage positioning, ability usage or other game related skills to somewhat offset any disadvantage from input lag. So I'm really talking about myself here, in that I'm someone who only plays Reinhardt, and for me personally, cloud gaming is fine. I don't really have much experience with the other heroes, but I'm certain, I've been told that a lot of the support heroes as well are perfectly fine with cloud gaming, because they don't really rely on precise aim quite so much, or at least it's not as integral for them to do damage. It's more positioning, healing and staying alive, things like that, just using your experience and knowledge, map knowledge and pathing. And yeah, this is important when it comes to Overwatch, because the argument that Overwatch is not suitable for cloud gaming is wrong, because a lot of heroes, it's argued that Overwatch is a first-person shooter, and first-person shooters are really bad for cloud gaming. And this is true. First-person shooter multiplayer games are bad on cloud gaming, but Overwatch specifically has many heroes that are not really first-person shooter heroes, like Reinhardt, Bridget, Mercy. These are not really played to shoot stuff, or not played in the first person even. Like Wrecking Ball is played in third person, Reinhardt is played in third person when he shields. So same for Brig. Moira is a hero that doesn't really shoot. Like Symmetra is a first-person shooter hero, kind of, but she does have quite a lot of abilities that are kind of not so traditional, like the massive shield, the infinite shield thing for her ultimate, and her turrets and her teleporter. All of these things are parts of her kit that don't rely on low latency to make use of, really. I hope I'm being able to explain that. But really, you can see from my gameplay, if you watch my gameplay videos, I'm still doing okay with Reinhardt. I'm still able to maintain, like, probably, I would be able to probably maintain plat, at least, I think. And yeah, so Reinhardt is not aim intensive, he's just got a massive hammer. Winston is pretty good, I would imagine, with cloud gaming. Even Doomfist to some extent, although nowadays he's a bit more aim reliant. So, and as I mentioned previously, the point about the game now having bigger hitboxes, this means the game is more suitable to be played on cloud gaming services. Now moving on to the next point, Overwatch 2 supports reflex mode for GFN. Now this point I might not be correct about this, because when you go on GFN, even though the game itself does support reflex mode, on GFN it's not showing reflex support. So maybe this will come down later down the line, I'll have to see. Maybe it will come with the update with the GFN day passes. That might actually be today. Today is Thursday. We might actually see the day passes, which means we might actually also see the 60 FPS and 120 FPS reflex mode support, which could include Overwatch 2. So we'll have to see about this, but this could dramatically reduce the latency for cloud gaming as well. But you do need to have Ultimate tier to be able to make use of this, I believe. Game can be run at high settings with comparably good latency compared to a well below system requirement machine. So just to explain this point a bit more, I'm referring to very low spec Windows gaming Windows machines. Like they might have integrated graphics, they might have they might have very poor graphics cards, very old, outdated graphics cards, and that means they run the game at like 15, 20, 25, 30 FPS. And at those frame rates, you're going to experience quite a lot of latency, especially at 20 FPS. Like there was a guy who was saying he used to get dips down to 10 FPS, like stuttering all the way down to 10 FPS, and that's crazy. That will have even more latency and make the game even more difficult to play than just using cloud gaming, even if you do have a bit of latency through cloud gaming. Next point, high speed, low latency fiber to the premises broadband becomes more commonplace over time. To explain this point a bit more, I do probably need to look into this a bit more, but more regions, from what I understand, more regions are now getting improvements to the broadband infrastructure, and we recently got this where I live. We recently got really high speed fiber optic. We already had fiber optic before for years, many years actually. I live in the UK, and fiber optic is not uncommon in the UK. Lots of people do have fiber to the premises. I had it with Sky Broadband before, and we had low latency fiber to the premises broadband or fiber to the property. I think it was like we had 3 milliseconds ping if I used a speed test, and I can actually do a speed test now, and you would see I have very good latency. This is because I have 500 megabits down to 500 up, and it's a really good connection. Also very close to the GFN server as well, I think, to the GFN server in London. And yeah, right now I'm using Community Fibre, which is an ISP in the UK. They only are in London right now, but they have the very fast down and up speeds, so that's why I went with them. And yeah, they have really good latency, but really I don't think this is inaccessible. I think in America they have good broadband as well. The problem with Americans is they do have the data caps. That can be problematic, which I'll mention that as an against point later on, but that can be problematic when you run into data caps. But apart from that, the low latency fiber to property is becoming more commonplace. Next point, easy to perform a speed test to see if one has sufficient connection quality. So very easy. You just, if you haven't already got the app, you can go on the website and you can conduct a speed test for yourself. I'll run a speed test right now just to show you how easy it is. So anyone who's looking to get into cloud gaming, you should definitely do a speed test to test your connection speed. So you see I have 4 milliseconds latency on to my speed test. This is not going to be your GFN latency. This is just your speed test latency to whichever server the speed test application is using. Zen Internet. So CFL is my provider's Community Fibre Limited, and this is not my full download speed because I'm using a power line. This is about half. I have 500 down and up. And remember, this is not your GFN latency. You want to do a separate test for GFN because they have their servers in a different location. But yeah, you can see I have very good connection speed. I use a power line. So basically what power line is it? Because I don't want to run Ethernet to my room, I use what is called a power line, and that makes it a lot easier because I just have to use a socket, power socket, and it goes straight to my room and gives me the low latency. Basically a lot of the benefits of Ethernet, almost like an Ethernet connection, almost as good. So now I'll try and do a speed test. I don't know if you can do it from here, but yeah, you can do test network. And you always want to choose the server that is closest to you in GFN. You want to select this button manually. So I always choose EU West because that's where I am located in London, so that's where I get the lowest latency. But a lot of people will want to do a different server, and they'll have to look up where is their lowest latency, where is their nearest GFN server. So you see I have over 50, I have 4 latency, 0 packet loss. Packet loss is very important as well. But some people do get a lot of packet loss, and that can be something that is bad when you're trying to play cloud gaming. So if you do experience packet loss, then cloud gaming is not going to be suitable for you for sure. That's something I should actually mention. And you want less than 80 required, less than 40 recommended. I think these numbers even are quite high. You really ideally want less than 20 for playing first-person shooters games like Overwatch. For Overwatch, you're really going to need less than 20, ideally less than 10. But yeah, these are the recommended values. Bandwidth doesn't matter as much as the latency and packet loss, in my opinion. So yeah, as you can see, I'm still on the free tier. Oh, and just to show you about the point about the games, the GFN not supporting Overwatch reflex, the way you can check that is if you go to filter here, feature, reflex, and you see Overwatch is not listed here. There's only 14 games. These are the games that actually support reflex. You'll see here that it will show reflex with that lock icon, padlock icon. That means that this game supports RTX and reflex, but I need to upgrade in order to see that, to get that. But Overwatch 2 is not actually supporting it, only supports HDR, no reflex support. So hopefully this will come later down the line. Okay, so next point, Wi-Fi technologies improve over time and provide an acceptable experience under ideal conditions. So this is just what I was saying earlier about low latency broadband becomes more commonplace. Wi-Fi is also improving. We are getting Wi-Fi 7. Right now, Wi-Fi 6E is kind of the one most devices are on as the latest cutting edge one, but Wi-Fi 7 is coming as well. I believe that improves things even further. And this means, now normally I would not ever recommend using Wi-Fi. In my case, I cannot use Wi-Fi to get a stable, really perfectly good connection to GFN, and that leads to a lot of stuttering if I do use Wi-Fi, even if it looks like the results of the test are good. I cannot rely on Wi-Fi, and I don't recommend people use Wi-Fi for playing cloud gaming. You really want to use Ethernet, and this isn't going to be easy for everyone to do, but you absolutely do need to use Ethernet right now, I think, unless you have a really stable Wi-Fi connection and your Wi-Fi chip in your device is good as well. It needs to be a very good device. I think the only Wi-Fi 7 device that I'm aware of is the new handheld, Windows gaming handheld, the MSI Claw. That's the only one that I know of that has Wi-Fi 7, but the Steam Deck has Wi-Fi 6E. The Asus ROG Ally has Wi-Fi 6E, I think. So yeah, my MacBook has Wi-Fi 6, and this laptop that I'm on only has Wi-Fi 5, so I really can't rely on it for cloud gaming. Next point, game can be enjoyed with reduced fan noise and lowered thermals. This is something I hate. I hate fan noise, and having the system be completely silent is so amazing when I'm playing on cloud gaming. It's such a nice feeling, and obviously the assurance of knowing that your system is not going to overheat because there's no pressure on the graphics card to render the graphics, nothing like that. It's all being done on the cloud, so that is amazing. Just the fact that it's silent, I can hear my game. I don't need to turn the volume up of the speakers. I don't need to disturb anyone. If I'm in a room with someone, they won't be disturbed by the fan noise, and this is great. Also, reduced energy consumption reduces electricity bills for the end user. This is self-explanatory as well, because it's all being run in the cloud, not on your local device, so you're not using any of your resources on your machine. If you use a PS5, you probably know that it consumes a lot of electricity. These devices, these high-powered graphics cards, especially like the RTX 4080, would consume so much electricity. Like you'd get at least £15 per month just from running the game for a few hours per day. £15-20 per month you would be paying just for that. So that's the same price as GFN Ultimate, just from the electricity bill alone, if you had an RTX 4080 or a 4090. I'm not sure if I mention it here, but I should also mention another point, the battery life. Oh yeah, I do have this as a point. But this goes hand in hand with the point about battery life being like Asus ROG Li, which has quite poor battery life when you try and run games locally. But yeah, obviously there's no electricity being used by the device, which means you get better battery on the Steam Deck, on the handheld devices, on a laptop. I could probably get my MacBook to run like for at least 6 hours just cloud gaming because the battery life is so good. And also GFN on the MacBook also has now a native Apple Silicon application, which means it's even more efficient now. Boosteroid also has an Apple Silicon native application, which means it's really efficient and saves battery because it's not having to run through Rosetta. So, and that also goes for mobile phones as well. They're not going to overheat. And sometimes something you notice with mobile phones is that when you play games, they overheat and the screen actually dims because it gets so hot. And you're not going to experience that with cloud gaming, I think. Although some old phones do overheat even just from downloading things, and cloud gaming can actually overheat my phone. But that's because I have a really old phone. The newer ones, they really don't get stressed out through cloud gaming. They really can handle it easily, and the screen brightness is not being affected, which is great. Resources on a local machine can be dedicated to recording, stream, broadcasting, or other activities without impeding the performance of the game. And by this I'm referring to services like YouTube. If you want to become a content creator, you can stream to Twitch or to YouTube. You can stream directly to Twitch or YouTube. You can record your game, and none of these things usually have a performance hit if you're running the game locally, like a very small but it is noticeable performance hit, like a 2 or 3% hit to your performance. And yeah, this, when you run it on the cloud, obviously you're just not making use of your local machine at all to render the game, which means all of your graphics power can be dedicated to recording. All of your CPU power can be dedicated to the streaming or whatever you want to do. Listen to YouTube, watch a YouTube video in the background. It's not going to impact the frame rate of your game or the performance. Next point, payment choice is more flexible than buying a gaming machine outright. Even completely free options exist. Obviously, as I said, I'm on the GFN free tier. This is completely free, and I've been really enjoying myself, even on the free tier. And I also even get quick queue times, even with this free tier. Like, it's because it's early morning, I can load up the game, and you'll see a very short queue time, like loading instantly, already loading, which is amazing. So that's already loading up, even though I'm on the free tier of GFN. And obviously it's much cheaper than buying a gaming machine, which would be like £500. And when I'm talking about the payment choices, I mean things like for example, they will be coming out with day passes. GFN is going to introduce day passes, and obviously you can pay for GFN through the monthly option, right? So being able to pay through a monthly option is great, because it means that, let me exit this. Being able to pay monthly means, let's say you only play games some months and not on other months. Like, you might have a holiday one month, and you might want to maximize your holiday to play Overwatch or play games during that month. Then you have that ability to pay only for that month that you want to play. You can't do that when you buy a gaming machine outright, because you have to spend the whole amount, the full amount. And obviously this only applies to the 1 month options or the 6 months or the day passes. But with the 6 months, obviously you don't get as much of that advantage, because you can't pick and choose which month you want to play if you get the 6 months option. So it mostly applies to the 1 month option. And you also have day passes, but they're not really great value for GFN, because it's almost as much as just buying the full month period. But still, it's a good way to try it out. Next point is, good internet and cloud subscription is cheaper in some developing countries than gaming hardware. I think this is true in countries like Brazil, in South America, Turkey. Some countries it's actually cheaper to just have a good internet and a cloud subscription like GFN or Boosteroid or Amazon Luna. Can be cheaper than buying gaming hardware, like an Xbox, like a console. Those are really overpriced in some countries, because of the inflation and because of the currency exchange rate, they might have a weaker value with their currency, which means these pieces of hardware are less accessible. Like we all come from, we in the West, meaning like from UK and America especially, come from a more privileged place where we can say, you know, with a month's salary you can easily afford to buy, even with minimum wage you can afford to buy an Xbox or whatever you want to buy. But that's not true for a lot of people. A lot of countries, developing countries, they actually have a lower minimum wage, which means it would take like a month's wage just to have the disposable income to buy a console. So cloud gaming is great in that sense. Okay, next point. Cloud game streaming services have and will continue to be improved. There's so much I could say about this, about how cloud gaming services are improving over time, and like GFN recently added the ultimate tier last year, I think it was, with the RTX 4080 and with 120 FPS support, and then later on they even added 240 FPS support, which is crazy, and they added reflex mode support with the 4080 tier and got the latency down to, I think it's like 30 milliseconds. As a under ideal conditions, they got it down all the way to 30 milliseconds. So they are improving. Boosteroid is also improving very rapidly, doing better and better, and adding so many games and just getting better and improving the service. And they made the Apple Mac application on Boosteroid, and with GFN obviously you do have native Apple Silicon applications, as I mentioned before. Next point, infrequent Overwatch 2 players may wish to play 1 month or 1 day on occasion, and they would only need to pay for the month or a day that they wanted. And this goes hand in hand with the payment choices being more flexible point that I mentioned earlier, this point here. So yeah, this is just great if you're not a super serious dedicated gamer. Maybe you only play from time to time, and you don't need to pay for a whole year or like many months. You don't need to pay outright a big fee for a console or a gaming PC. You only need to pay for the month or the day that you want. Especially with day passes, you can pay for the day that you want with GFN. Although it's not great value, but you can still pay for that day, and it would work out cheaper for you if it's only a day you want to play for, like occasionally. But for most people, the month option is probably the best. Next point is good for more than simply playing the game. For example, one can watch back their replays on the cloud. This has no low latency demand, and this is something I always do. I always watch my replays back. It's kind of a form of entertainment for me, just to see how I performed in a game, and just being able to watch myself back even on my phone. I can load up Overwatch on my phone through GFN now, or through Boosteroid, and I can watch my replays back, and it's great. I don't have to record the game. I can just watch my replays on my phone or whatever, on any device I want, and it's great to be able to see how other players in my matches played as well. I love the replay system. I think it's probably the best feature of Overwatch that was ever added to Overwatch. And they've recently improved the replay system even further by adding the bookmarks feature, which means you can see whenever, each and every time you died, you can see a timestamp on your replay, and it will instantly take you there. You can see every elimination, you can see every ultimate you used, instantly you can go there in the timeline. It's amazing. They've added this bookmarks feature. I actually made a separate video about that, but yeah, it's a great feature. And obviously there's no low latency demand, because you're not relying on interacting with the game. You're just watching it like a video, so obviously there's no need for you to have low latency. There's no problem. And this point alone is sufficient as an argument, in my opinion, as a good argument for Overwatch on cloud gaming. Even if you never play the game, if you only watch your replays back, it's a nice way to watch your replays back. It's like a form of for entertainment and learning and education, because you can improve yourself by seeing your mistakes and trying to work on your mistakes, and just noting down your problem areas and trying to work on them and improve them. or even watching pro players, like you can ask them for their replays and you can try to emulate how they play. So yeah, the replay system is amazing, and you don't need to have a great connection to be able to benefit from that advantage. Next point is markedly improved battery life for portable devices as the game is not run locally. As I mentioned, Steam Deck, the Asus ROG Ally, mobile phones, these all have very short battery time when you're actually running games locally. Like a mobile phone will not last you longer than 2 hours or 3 hours when you're trying to play a game like Genshin Impact. You'll see it really heats up the device and it really takes a big toll on the battery life. And when you can play these games through cloud, there's no problem with the battery life. It's only using your Wi-Fi, and yeah, so obviously you get much better battery life. On a mobile phone, you maybe even last as long as 3-4 hours, 5 hours, maybe even. On a laptop, my MacBook probably run for 8 hours, and I've tested my Asus ROG Ally that can run up to 4 hours if you run it at 10 watts, and you only need the lowest power profile to play cloud gaming because it doesn't take up much resources. So yeah, I did test. I didn't test cloud gaming. I just tested Moonlight, but it's basically in principle the principle is the same. I used Moonlight and I think I was getting 4 hours battery life on my Asus ROG Ally. Yeah. Next point is no need to worry about hardware upgrades, hardware wear and tear, or driver updates, as such maintenance can be done by the provider. So obviously hardware upgrades, GFN is upgrading every few years. They recently added the GFN 30, they added the 3080 tier, and then they upgraded to 4080, and that had no charge for the customers, no extra charge, like no additional charge, because you were paying £20 before and then £20 afterwards, so they didn't actually increase the price. I think they did increase just a little bit recently from £18 to £20, but that was to bring the service more in line with America pricing. But there's no actual price upgrade to pay for these upgrades, which is great. Boosteroid is also going to be adding new servers which might actually have better hardware, because they're going to be adding the 4K servers soon. And yeah, I can't really speak much of Xbox Cloud Gaming because I'm not a fan of it at all. I think it's terrible. Not a good showcase for cloud gaming in general. Xbox Cloud Gaming is not great, and the hardware they use is obviously the Xbox Series blades, Xbox Series X, and they used to have Xbox Series S, and then they upgraded to Series X hardware. So that is great, and you don't have to worry about driver updates. Obviously, the cloud gaming service will take care of that. You don't need to worry about the wear and tear of the device over time. Like graphics cards can actually wear out on the paste. The thermal paste can wear out, and that can cause overheating over time. Obviously, it's not going to be for everyone, but especially with laptops, the thermal paste can thin out over time, and that can mean they don't transfer heat as effectively, which basically means that the laptop needs to run the fans higher, or it will result in overheating, and that means more fan noise, which again goes back to my point about fan noise not being a problem with cloud gaming. A lot of these points just go hand in hand with each other, but I've kind of spread them out over bullet points because I wasn't really thinking about them in that way. I was just, whatever came to my mind, I just made a bullet point as a new point, but a lot of these points go together. This isn't in any particular order, these points, they're just what came to my mind as I was trying to think of the argument for cloud gaming. Next point, Overwatch is quick in and out gameplay, ideal for the 1 hour session length of GFN spree tier. So the average quick play game I think is like 10 minutes, and that's great for GFN spree tier, because what you don't want to do is be stuck in a game where you won't be able to finish it. Like a Baldur's Gate 3, you probably would want quite a long session to benefit from playing a game like that, or playing a game like a strategy game like Age of Empires, they can take quite a while to really get going and really do a full match. But with Overwatch, the matches are so quick. It's like 10 minutes for quick play, 20 minutes, up to 20 minutes for comp is the maximum probably. Sometimes it can be longer, but yeah, this is great for the 1 hour session length with GFN free tier, which I'm currently on GFN free tier. And I think you can play like you can fit like 3 competitive games within that 1 hour, which is great. And if you don't want to get booted out of a game mid-game, what you want to do is play arcade for your last few minutes of GFN, because otherwise if you get booted out during quick play, then obviously you will run into the leaver penalty over time if you keep leaving enough games. Next point is no issues with game saves, as Overwatch's player progress is entirely online. I think this point is self-explanatory. Obviously you don't need to worry about saving your currency, your coins, your Overwatch coins, legacy currency, credits, or whatever they're called now, competitive points, your hero progress, your rank, all of those things are saved online. And it's not really a progression system in Overwatch, it's mostly like just saving your rank, like is your data. It's not like an RPG where you collect items and stuff, so you don't have to worry about that. But all of your skins and all of your cosmetics, obviously they go with you, they stay with your account, not on your local hardware. So that's why Overwatch is an ideal game. It's the perfect game for GFN in that sense. Next point, cloud offers comparable or better latency than a console under ideal conditions. The technology is tried and proven. This point I can provide evidence of. This was tested and verified. GFN claimed 30 milliseconds, I think it was, in their graph. They actually had this graph where they were comparing to Xbox Series X. They were using Fortnite as their demonstration, as their comparison point, and they were getting better latency through GFN Ultimate with reflex mode enabled with 120 FPS, or than maybe it was 240 FPS, I can't recall, but they were getting better latency than a Xbox Series X at 60 FPS, and that's great because it means, you know, if you have equal latency to a console, then why would you complain? Because if a console is good enough for lots of people, and it is good enough for many people, then cloud gaming should also be fine by basic logic. That if a game is good enough on console, then you wouldn't really worry about latency any more so. If you have 30 milliseconds, that would be fine. 30 milliseconds, but you would obviously need ideal conditions. But then remember, the game is on Nintendo Switch, and you have 30 FPS on the Nintendo Switch, and you have so much input lag, and yet people still enjoy the game, people still play the game, right? So if you can still enjoy the game, then that's all you need. You don't need super duper amazing performance or low latency. Obviously it is more enjoyable when you have low latency, but you don't need it to play the game. It's not completely unplayable, and that's demonstrated by the Switch, Overwatch being on the Switch, Nintendo Switch. So for a lot of people, cloud gaming offers better latency than a Nintendo Switch. Next point is more difficult to cheat, as game files cannot be modified and external programs cannot be run on pick-up and play cloud platforms. This point is also self-explanatory. You can't really change the files in GFN. You can't really access the local installation of Overwatch or the files. As soon as you try and do anything like that, the cloud gaming session will automatically close. And I believe it's also against terms of service on Boosteroid to do anything with the local game data. You can't really change anything on the local machine. And that's really the same for any pick up and play cloud platform, which means a cloud platform where you play games that you already own and that you don't really have to install on a system they already have installed on their end. So that is kind of a small benefit as well. You can't cheat, so players who are going through cloud gaming platforms will not be able to cheat. Next point is no room space occupied by a bulky gaming console or desktop. And this point, obviously, the PlayStation 5 is pretty massive. Even though it's a bit slimmer now with the PlayStation 5 Slim, but it's still a very big device. Xbox Series X is pretty big as well. And desktop obviously is massive compared to, say, like if you were to compare a gaming console or desktop to a Fire Stick or a, let's say, a Nvidia Shield. Those are very small devices, and that's all you need for cloud gaming. You don't need any kind of big device for cloud gaming. You can do it on something as small as a mobile phone, and you can connect your mobile phone to your monitor if you want to play like that. But yeah, it can be used on very small, even like Fire Stick or smart TVs, or you can use it on your smart TV and you won't need to have an external console at all with GFN. I think the new Samsung TVs actually support cloud gaming applications like GFN Boosteroid and Xbox Cloud Gaming. And the final point is probably the most important point of all. This is probably the strongest argument I can give you, is more options for gamers in how they access games. For many gamers, cloud is the most convenient option. And at this point especially I want to emphasize more options for gamers. Why would anyone argue against having more options? Nobody's forced to play through cloud gaming. When I talk about this stuff to people who are, you could call them cloud gaming skeptics or cloud gaming haters, but they really try to tell you why the game should not be on GFN or should not be on cloud gaming platforms. But I always go back to this point of, why would you argue against this when you don't have to use it? You don't have to use it yourself. It's another option. It's another option for people who don't have access to any way to play these games, and this is maybe the only option for them if you're on a Mac or if you're on a mobile phone. If you don't have a gaming device at all, if you don't have a console or a gaming PC, then this is the only option for you. And it's great to have more options, because that means more competition in the gaming industry in accessing games. So all hardware providers have to compete better and lower their prices if they have to compete against cloud as well. So this is a good thing, I think, for everyone. And more options, more convenient, because you don't have to have a specific device. You can use it on any screen basically. And that goes back to my first point of Overwatch 2 being more accessible to more players. So all of these, I guess you could say, it wraps back around to my very first point. So these were all the arguments for cloud gaming. I tried to make it more general about cloud gaming. Obviously I had to make it about Overwatch 2 because these are the Overwatch forums. I had to kind of make it about Overwatch. But a lot of these points are very generally applied to cloud gaming in general, the benefits of cloud gaming and the arguments for cloud gaming. So I hope this was useful. I hope you can maybe, if you were not a fan of cloud gaming, if you did not understand cloud gaming, or if you did not know why people wanted cloud gaming as a good thing, why they say it's a good thing for games to be on the services, this will help you understand, I hope. I hope I've been able to explain each of these points. I've tried to go in detail, but I would be happy to explain any of these points in more detail. So this is the argument for cloud gaming basically, and there is more. There is more stuff that I could talk about. I could go on talking about this forever, because cloud gaming is very important to me. Accessibility is very important to me, and I'll continue to root for cloud gaming and advocate for Overwatch and other games to come to cloud game streaming platforms. And I hope you will also, if you were a skeptic, I hope you will change your mind, at least understand these points. Even if you still haven't changed your mind, at least understand why people are in favor of cloud gaming. Now, this was the argument for cloud gaming. I'll talk about the arguments against cloud gaming later on, or I might edit it into this video. But right now I just wanted to get the argument for cloud gaming out of the way and make sure I've explained everything. So I hope this was interesting and helpful. I hope you learned something about cloud gaming, and I'm still learning something every day. I'm still seeing how these cloud platforms improve is amazing. It's so amazing how rapidly they improve, and I'm there's always news every day. Today is Thursday, and we'll get a GFN update shortly. In a few hours, we will see what's going to be coming. So I hope you enjoyed the video. And this, mostly, I should also mention something I didn't mention in this. I didn't explicitly say here, but really, when I talk about cloud gaming, I'm really in favor of GFN, especially as the showcase of what cloud gaming can be. There are a lot of bad cloud gaming platforms. That I need to make that clear, that there are a lot of bad cloud gaming platforms like Xbox Cloud Gaming, and it's terrible, and the video quality is terrible, and the latency is not great. But with GFN, it's the bitrate is so good and so pristine, like it looks exactly like native, provided you can run it at the highest bitrate. If you can run it at 75 Mbps or 100 Mbps, then you will get a very comparable native looking gameplay, which is great. And it looks, you won't be able to tell the difference really between playing on the cloud and playing locally. So that's the great thing about cloud gaming on GFN especially. I think there is no cloud gaming platform that matches GFN right now. So if you want to see what cloud gaming is capable of, the potential of cloud gaming, you always want to go with the best one. Don't go with the other ones. Use GFN. It's very easy to try out because you have day passes now, even for priority. And if you don't want to pay for day passes, you can try the free tier. But the one thing I do recommend you do is set your server to your nearest one, and then test your network connection. Always do a test. And do the same for Boosteroid as well. You can do a network test. It's very easy to do these things. Everyone should try cloud gaming out. It might not be for you because of the problems. There are problems like latency. I will talk about that in the next next segment of this. But everyone should try cloud gaming out, provided you don't have some kind of limitation like your bandwidth caps with your ISP. If you have unlimited bandwidth like I do, lots of people in the UK have unlimited bandwidth. Even in America, lots of people do have unlimited bandwidth. You should definitely try it out. So this was the too long, didn't read bit that I just put at the end. Cloud game streaming is good to have as an option. The more platforms, the better. Consumers, i.e. gamers, benefit. Play on the hardware you already own. Not suitable for everyone due to potential drawbacks, which I go over here in the against section. Tech rapidly improving, so the server infrastructure is constantly being added to new places. Boosteroid is adding new servers to the Europe, to EU, and will be adding in the future to America. GFN is also adding new servers constantly. So this is great. I hope you enjoyed this little talk. Make sure you spread the word about cloud gaming and try to advocate for game publishers to bring their games to cloud platforms, because this is great for all gamers everywhere. Having games available is more consumer friendly. It means more competition. It means prices have to be driven lower, and cloud platforms have to compete even amongst themselves. Amazon, Luna, GFN, Boosteroid, these are all competing with themselves, with each other, so they have to drive prices down, provided they are all successful, which is why I root for the small player. Boosteroid is the small player here, and I root for them because I want them to succeed and continue to compete with GFN, which will constrain GFN's prices as well in turn. So yeah, make sure you advocate for cloud gaming. Obviously you don't need to be crazy about cloud gaming, but at least support people who want to bring games to cloud gaming and request publishers to bring games to cloud gaming. There's no reason to hate on them. There's no reason to say I don't think this game should be on cloud gaming just because of XYZ, because it's not for me. Maybe it's not for you, but a lot of people will benefit from cloud gaming and will be very happy to have the ability to play on the hardware of their choice. I am a Mac user. I have a gaming laptop, but I don't really like using it because of the very loud fan noise, and I really prefer to use my Mac most of the time. So I'm probably just going to get rid of my gaming laptop and just keep the Mac, and that's really all I need with GFN, thanks to the game being on GFN and being on Boosteroid. I don't need anything else really. It's sufficient for me to play through cloud, because I'm really more of a casual player. I'm fine with playing Reinhardt, and I can play fine just by positioning myself well and Yeah, there is a bit of latency for me, but it's enough to have fun. That's the main thing about gaming, right? It's as long as you're having fun, and you can have fun with cloud gaming. I hope you found this informative, and in the next segment or the next video I will talk about the against points. Thanks for watching.